Hola, hello, bienvenidos a Oye Dimelo Cinema Club Incorporated. My name is Don Dino Espesini, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm also here with Michaela, JP, Raymond, and a little bit later, hopefully, we'll get some Jason in the house. So, for today's movie, I picked the movie Coda. It was actually between Coda and another movie, and we did a vote, and yeah, Coda ended up winning. And not only did Coda win for our pick of the movie, but it also won the Oscar for Best Film. Winning is, I don't think, the best word to describe getting an Oscar because it is, subjective and all that. But it was awarded the Film of the Year in the Oscars, as well as a couple screenwriting and actor, supporting actor, I believe. And so, yeah, I was interested in this film ever since I saw the trailers and all that, and things just piled up, and I never got to it. And after the Oscars, and since we're doing this, I felt it'd be a great reason to watch the movie, and we can talk about it. So, yeah, that's kind of what was going on in my head when I decided to pick the film. So yeah, I'd like to hear your guys' first impressions, or if you rewatched the movie because you were a better movie file than me. Raymond, I'll start with you because you look so relaxed and in the zone.
My first impressions. You know, I feel like 10 years ago there was this idea of like, well, and then you have that. Now I'm going against my first impressions. First impression. But basically, what I was gonna say is like, 10 years ago, you kind of knew that Oscar bait film that was a front runner, and these days, like the Oscar bait films don't even make it to Oscar season. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like I'm speaking in weird, not being very specific, but I felt like Coda was one of those films that felt like the former Oscar bait films, but actually of the moment. Like it felt current. It felt like what those films were to that time period, as is this film to this time period, in like a good way. Because it was like it wasn't too sappy or trying to be something that it wasn't, like too important or too high and mighty or highbrow. It felt like it was more the Juno route of things, where it was like a slice of life, happenstance, but the story is saying something, which felt very more today's kind of version of Oscar bait if I had to choose one. Um,
Really? You think? I mean, maybe we'll get into this. I'm so interested in diving more into the Oscar bait scenario of it because I thought I was hearing you correctly in what you thought an Oscar bait movie was, but I don't think this is the current Oscar bait type movie. I think this is kind of up there with like Moonlight, where it's like the dark horse Oscar bait, which what used to maybe in the 90s what had more of a chance of being an Oscar bait, but now I don't think it fits that. Maybe we'll get into it more into it later because I'm sure everyone watching this is just riveted in hearing us kind of in a coded way talk about Oscar bait, not Oscar bait. Um, but yeah, yeah, go Raymond if you have
I
more.
guess just to wrap up my thought real quick, I guess I'm meaning like the based on a existing person biopic, historical figure, changed the world, the Stephen Hawking's, the King's
Right.
Speech, the that kind of vibe. This felt more
Okay.
that, like, of that, but like slice of life,
Right.
just a everyday person. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. That was just like the kind of dialogue that was going in my head. I don't even
Got
know if
it.
I fully believe it, but that was kind of like, huh. And it straddled a line of like not being too sappy, but being precious in moments that made it felt a little heartfelt in an authentic way. And then the last thing I was going to mention, which is more initial thought than a first impression, is that there has been an uproar from a lot of the deaf community saying that it's not exactly the representation that they're looking for.
For this movie?
Yeah.
I can
And
see why.
and I'm probably not the best gonna articulate it, but you know what? I'm not even gonna try to articulate it. I've seen those headlines. Done.
Okay.
So, are you confused with maybe because this is a remake or an adaptation of a French film that is basically identical? Instead of like fishermen, they have a farm. And the issue with that French film, I know we're going real in depth before first impressions, but just because we're on this subject. So, the French film, only one of the deaf characters was actually played by a deaf actor, and the other two deaf people in the family were actually regular actors speaking. So that original French film got a lot of blowback on just kind of like, hey, like this is not cool, like why not? And so when this American version came out, from what I looked and what I saw online, it was like this is more like it. Hire not only did they hire deaf actors in the roles, but also in behind the scenes and stuff like that, they had people that were deaf or Coda. There were a lot of Coda people helping out in the movie, which is children of deaf adults. So
Well,
from what I saw was like this got a better reception from the deaf community than the French movie that this was based on. But again, maybe
well, because at the end of the day, it's a step in the right direction. But
yeah,
where does the tension come from in this film? Like it's specifically the fact that her family is deaf, that they can never appreciate her love for music, and that's a huge that's the main, like, out of all of the plot points and troublesome things that are happening in her life, instead of it being more about the litigation of what they assume ableist standards are, like that could have been more of a thing. um and that's, like, I think something that a lot of people who don't deal with a lot of disability, like, that's something that a lot of people, like, don't consider. You're just like, well, yeah, you're there, like, see, you see it on the screen. um and yes, they were portrayed lovely, each character had a wonderful arc, but at the end of the day, the trouble was the fact that their disability got in the way of things, and that's not representation.
yeah.
you know like, if it hadn't been about the fact that they were, like, deaf, and, like,
I
their
did
deafness
think
was
it was
just a
gonna
part of
be.
it.
Yeah, I
you
guess
know
for my initial, I don't know if Michaela, if you want to jump into your first impressions or
okay,
initial
I
thoughts.
will. I
Yeah,
I think that the millennials have arrived. Like, I feel like I've seen this movie before in, like, different contexts. It's very, very reminiscent of a lot of Disney Channel films that I've seen, where it's like, girl, like, non-popular girl finds out she can sing, does the talent show, and ends up, like, finding something to say. And that doesn't make it a bad film. It's just, like, I think it's very interesting that, like, it's a very specific, like, I think this is what Raymond was trying to articulate earlier, where he's like, it, for an Oscar baity movie, it doesn't feel Oscar baity. Like, I think that's why, is because, like, it's kind of now kind of being catered to us as adults, which is kind of, like, fun to look at, like, because essentially that's what Coda is. It's that Disney Channel movie dressed up, and, like, they have some really wonderful things here, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I had a hard time with this one, and that's
okay.
my first impression.
JP, you want to give us your first impressions, initial thoughts? first thoughts, impressions, initial.
I don't know. It's a movie. No, it's kind of like I'm glad. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was gonna be very dreary, very like, oh god, I'm gonna hate this movie. It was oddly funny. I was shocked about the amount of humor that this movie had. Um, I wasn't a fan of the cinematography, to be quite honest. I thought it was rather. This is gonna sound weird. It's an Apple movie, and I was like, this movie was shot on an iPhone. That's what I got the vibes of. Most of the shots were very simplistic and stuff. And
Well,
plus,
they bought it after the movie was shot, so you're right. Or maybe it was shot on an Android, and then Apple's like, "We'll buy this movie,"
they
and
they, they added that filter because this is an oddly colorful movie, like like in a weird sort of way where I don't know if it was intentional or not. It looked very like all the like the colors are very pretty and they popped everywhere. It almost felt like a television movie at times. For me, the look of it, the look of it. That being said, like it's crazy. I'm oddly glad that it wasn't like I thought, because like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of like Oscar movies unless it's got a goddamn Tom Hanks in it. That's an Oscar baity movie, and I'll watch that 7 times a day. Fucking Tom Hanks, hell yeah. He's not gonna stop till he plays every fucking American in this country, and
Okay.
I appreciate him for it.
There's a
Anyways,
movie
no,
that
like it's yeah, I was surprised by this movie's humor. It's very, I don't want to say formulaic, but like there's nothing new about the movie. Just the fact that the characters, like there's a few that happen to be deaf, and like I think that's an interesting concept for a movie, and I didn't think it hindered it. There was a few great moments, but I don't know if I didn't hate the movie. I didn't hate it. We definitely seen some shit that I hated. But yeah, it's not gonna stay in my brain. I'm shocked that this one was as like high up, like during the Oscar things. Even though like I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch the Oscars. I did not know about this movie until afterwards, and I was like, oh okay, because people tried so hard to talk about other things in that ceremony. The films. The ceremony was
Yeah,
supposed to be about
yeah.
the films.
It is something that I thought, or that I think, kind of like now that that it won again, that it got the Oscar. When you watch movies that have already been awarded, I feel like it's under a different lens, right? Like if this movie had just come out and maybe was getting some buzz, or maybe it was like it won all the awards at Sundance and did all this. Well, let me watch it. Would it be different than watching it after the Oscars, right? Because there's a completely different, and it seems again, like you said, kind of like could be a TV movie. It's a very small movie, but then Apple paid like 25 million or something like that to purchase all the rights, which is like the most that any like streamer has paid or whatever for like an indie movie like that. So that there's so many different optics for sure. First thoughts for me, I enjoyed the movie, but like kind of what you guys have already said, story wise, it did follow that kind of same narrative of like odd girl, from the group and all that. But they add the deaf family and those interactions she has to deal with it. I actually thought the movie was gonna just be more around the family itself. I was a little surprised when I kept going out so much to her, and after kind of hearing you guys and all that, I guess the deaf community, that might be what they're kind of like, hey, now you're just seeing the one girl that the girl that can talk type of thing. But it is called Coda, which is children of deaf adults, so I guess that's the story of the girl who is able to to speak.
Well, and it's just, I don't know. I think another part of it is like the way that like their problems were lined up. Like they really do make the family seem like, well, why aren't you being more family oriented? Which that's all she does, and it's very clear to the audience. And I think that was like part of it. It's just like this like idea of like demand, especially like I think the brother has like a wonderful line where he's like, I can do this, I'm not an idiot.
So I thought, that those interactions, and dealing,
like,
I'm all about fishermen struggles and giving it to the man. So definitely like that kind of stuff, right? Like they did kind of tie it up in a little bow. I don't think Berklee auditions are that simple that she got there 30 minutes late, that an alumni is able. I'll just put that out there. But it is very sweet. It's very sweet, and it's very charming that she starts also signing because she sees her family up there, and then they see that. And did she get the scholarship for her singing, or did they see, oh, this can be our minority scholarship because it goes to someone of family of disability? There's all that I was thinking of, like she got accepted, but why did she get accepted? Because I'm not a good singer, so I couldn't tell like if she was such a great singer that she would have gotten the scholarship regardless. But that's me.
Well, even then though, like what they're not saying is like, as someone who went to one of those schools, they don't offer huge scholarships.
Yeah.
Like they're usually like, oh yes, this can pay for your dorms. Good thing there's a Pell Grant.
Right. But that's the thing, right? We're thinking she got one of the full rights, right? That's what, because they couldn't afford. They were already like got those 2 fines, 1,500, 1,000, like all that.
Which just magically like situated itself somehow because he sold the boat, but he didn't. But
right. Well, I think from what I understand, was that because she explained that, hey, we need to, like, if they're not fishing, then we can't make the money to thing. And so she was like, what can we do so that he can get back to fishing? So I thought that she helped them to where, like, okay, they have the fines, but they can go back out to the water so long as it's either her or someone else that is able to hear, and stuff like that. There was all that I would have also loved to see, just that movie itself. But I will say, oh man, we haven't even gotten into many of the things. But I will say, I don't think, like, for it to be an Oscar bait movie, I feel like it's one that from the get go is automatically seen like, oh, this is gonna be Oscar bait. And that's why I think this might be one that was made, and then the piranhas of the studios and people are like,
100%.
oh, this got all the feels. We're gonna ride this for everything it's got. But I don't think it came out because it wasn't an easy movie to just get funding and all that. This is one that it's a sweet little movie. That's why I kind of said like Moonlight, right? Because Moonlight was up against La La Land. Talk about Oscar ending award ceremony. And so yeah, when shit happens at a Oscar ceremony, bet for the underdog, because I feel like this was the underdog kind of movie. Yeah,
which is crazy because the show itself, since like the early 2000s, has been shit. So it's not too surprising that shit things happen in a shit show.
You know what I will also say that I found, just to kind of go with Oscar Beatty kind of movies, is that this is the first movie in 89 years that won Best Film that was not nominated for 4 Oscars or more. Wow. So that kind of, it was only nominated for 3 Oscars. So in 89 years ago was the last time a movie won for Best Film. I forget what movie it was, but it was only nominated, I guess, once for best film. So that, I guess, kind of just goes to show, right, the awards themselves. And yeah, like when you have a movie and you start pumping out like, for your consideration type of thing, it's like that's why I don't think this was Oscar baity, because it was like, yeah, it has 3 nominations. It just kind of skirted in there, and then you can go into the politics and the voting canceling each other out and everything, and then Coda wins, if that. But I still think it was a very sweet movie.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I got, like I said, my fisherman flannel, um, to support all the fishermen's out there. Yeah, I so we haven't really been following any kind of things. Let's talk about cinematography, just because JP did bring out, and he hates color apparently. So
I'm gonna double down. Not only do I hate color in film, my favorite movie was The Artist.
oh boy.
I also hate sound, which oddly enough, for a movie about, we're gonna shut the fuck up right now.
But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, all joking aside, uh, Raymond, you have any thoughts on the cinematography itself?
I did not enjoy it.
I thought so.
So
All the stuff.
can I just like? Can I also like a little pin though? Like, because I don't know, there was a few shots in there. Like, the movie seemed really. This is gonna sound crazy because of course the film, it's on a screen, but it looked flat. There was a lot of scenes that just seemed really flat. Very
So
just.
I was thinking about that, but part of it, and I might be mistaken, is that if you require to sign, everyone needs to be facing each other, right? That's a thing that I was noticing also some of their interactions, right? The
Yeah.
moment you turn away from someone, it's like you slam the door shut on them, right? I had some friends in college that actually were ASL uh, majors, and they became ASL teachers. Yeah, American Sign Language. And so yeah, so I would always kind of like ask them about like different situations and stuff like that. And so I can see that some of the filming and the parts where it is flat was because of certain scenarios where you need them facing each other, and it ends up being a little
Yeah.
bit more on the you know uh, constructed wise flat. But
It's crazy though, because like you say that, but like I was gonna bring up like my main example was there was this established shot with okay, what's the cast name? I'm gonna refer them to their names. I'm gonna do this. What's their name? What's their name? What's the cast member? I need a playbill of the ensemble of this movie.
the
Ruby and that kid Miles, Ruby and Miles when they're at the cliff, right?
yeah.
And there's an establishing shot of the cliff, the lake, and the other cliffs, right? And I couldn't help but think, wow, those are the flattest damn cliffs I've ever seen.
Oh,
No,
I can think that.
I thought that completely. It seemed like such a very simple, like, this is gonna sound crazy. There was some moments of the film that felt almost Wes Anderson like if he didn't try. Where it's not perfect symmetry, but it's definitely flat. It's definitely just straight onto something, but there's nothing symmetrical or pretty about what I'm looking at. But it's colorful.
Yeah, I think that's part of why is because it is so colorful, so it kind of renders there's so much for their eye to
I
take
saw
in.
that lake and the little cliffs and all that like the first time when she was just there by herself, and I was automatic like I wish I was there. I wish I knew where that was, right? Like I want to
Right.
go there, type of thing. But um, yes, everything that I've read about like the making of the film and all that was that it was like a struggle just because like they had to like learn how to like work the trawler and the fishing, and the minute they got there was a freaking storm, and like this whole thing was whatever. But I wish I would have seen more of that kind of none of the storm. You can go watch Perfect
The
Storm if you want
fishing.
that movie, but the interaction with the community of fishermen themselves, right? Like
Mhm.
I wish, especially the fact when the dad throws out that his father and grandfather were also fishermen and all that. It's like, all right, there's more. But again, right? The movie's Coda. It's about the daughter. It's about the child of deaf adults. So that would be a different movie we're talking about. This one is specifically dealing with the struggles of a family member that can hear and talk where the rest of the family can't. So I don't know. I guess that's our constant thing is going back and forth between movies that, is
Yeah.
there, if it's Coda, what is deaf adult of hearing children? Is that a, yeah, DAOC?
No.
But yeah, anyway, so yeah, cinematography. I like the colors. I liked how, this is me, of the stuff that I enjoyed from this was how simple it was.
Yeah.
You know. So it wasn't trying to overdo the Wes Anderson, like the whole log scene in the lake, just like trying to like stand on the log, walk. What I was worried of was that they were, because of her friend being like the sexually active one, and this is where kind of Michaela we were talking about, or she's like the nerdy, or the non-likable artiste, if you will, and then gets turned around. She doesn't really change other than just following her singing. She
Yeah.
doesn't really have a makeover other than the mom buying her the dress and the mom actually pushing her with the makeup and stuff.
They
But
still had that scene.
huh?
But they still had the dress scene where it was just like, I know that like you're probably not gonna like it, but as women,
No,
this is how we bond through clothes.
that, yeah, but that was the mom and it was her thing, and they had also brought that up before
Yeah,
that the
that's
mom
true.
had won a pageant, which again I wish I would have seen the mom more, right? Like there
I know,
were,
like out of all of the interesting dynamics, like hers was like the fact that she was more scared of being alone with people who could hear and not being able to understand them. That
yeah.
was a lot more interesting to me.
Right, but again, well,
Oh,
now could it be? Well, no, that wouldn't make sense again, right? That's where us as people that can hear and talk, we're almost like we want to, and there's a voyeurism aspect also of movies and stuff like that, especially when it's more serious
mhm.
or somewhat biographic or whatever, that we want to be like immersed into it. So the one character that we are the most alike is the character that we don't want to see, right?
Maybe I don't know. It's just I'm not saying that it's a bad like it's not a bad film. It's really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah,
You know, like it definitely is reminiscent of stuff that like we all grew up on, which is great.
right,
It's just but like that's the thing is like we've all seen like a version of
right.
this.
No,
And
I was just kind of having more of the taking the conversation out of the movie and us
right.
as the audience of how come we're more interested. Are we more interested in learning something new, right? Since most of us in this group has seen a lot of films, have worked on in different capacities on them and stuff like that. We have writers, and stuff like that. So it's like we all have a different background in, and
Mhm.
so it's different when we're watching something, because it's
Right,
like,
right.
yeah, we can see either the tropes, the character arcs, kind of before it happens, Anyway, I guess going back, I was worried they were gonna over sexualize her relationship with Miles, and
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't. I'm
Nope.
glad it was still kind of just you know a high school little crush
Yeah.
Yeah,
romance
but
thing.
the brother and the friend. I
Right,
need to
but
know how old that brother is.
no, and we don't know. Right, we don't know. Like also if the friend was already 18 because they were, like
Yeah.
last scene she's going to
That's
college.
the only
So
saving grace is that okay, she's almost out the door, but they never say if she's
they never.
18 or not.
Yeah,
They
but
she's definitely
she's
not
the
old enough to drink. They say that. That's 21. But I needed to know how old that man was.
well no we're
So there's the time gap right there. 1821.
I need to know how old he was. I needed to know
more so than her being 18.
of uncomfortable I needed.
More so than her being 18. You like my thing is like I hope she's 18. That's
No,
my
I
thing.
hope she's
Like
18 too.
yeah, not
I pray
necessarily
that
like
she's 18, but if she's not, I need to know how old he is. Because there's a line where he brings up that he remembers the little
well
sister being
I'll
around. It's like, okay, so you need to be old enough to have memories then.
no, not only that. Hey, he is able to buy alcohol. So he's 21 at
At
the very
least.
least. Or they just aren't checking IDs. But I'm
No,
pretty sure
I know he's at least 21, but I need to know how much over he is.
Anyway, point being, we're like her friend was the sexual friend from the get-go, and even she was even thirsting for teachers, which that in itself, I guess that's its own other movie, but can always watch Wild Things if you want to see student teacher stuff or whatever, student adult stuff. Uh, yeah, so we're. I feel like we're all over the place, other than just like it was a fun movie. It was a cute movie. It had nice parts in it, and we're just getting so. It's, this to me feels like it's just my brain. This is like Dino. This is what Dino sidebar feels like just in my head when I have all these different voices going all at once. Okay, all right. Here's a question for you guys because I did think of this and I thought maybe I at times wish they would have done it more. But the use of having sound and no sound in certain shots, and then also specifically using that in when the concert is happening. So what did you guys think of the use and no use of sound, and would you want to have seen more of it, or because that again was the POV, the point of view of the family, the deaf part of the family.
I'm go ahead.
Sorry, I honestly thought that was the best part of the film. That concert where you see the dad just wanting so hard to connect with what's going on. Like, oof, that was like the best part, especially like going from there to her like actually singing. Like, I feel like that was the best part of the movie. Like the fact that they did that during the song was that much like that was worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That the scene that followed up with her and the dad, that was definitely the Oscar winning scene. That was the scene. I was like, okay, I could see that's where the gold was earned for me, was that scene. And I'm glad that they only, it's like I might have remembered the movie wrong. That's the only time I remember the movie doing that. And I'm glad that the movie didn't do that more. I think it would have made that moment a lot lesser than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, I'm not gonna lie, to me it would have felt like a complete kind of like cliches. Like, we get it, they're deaf.
Mm-hmm.
We already know that they can't hear. It's like if the movie kept on doing that, I felt it would have been distracting or kind of hokey. They used it in the right moment.
Hmm.
So that's my take. That's my opinion.
And for you, Raymond?
I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I think rereading some of those headlines that I mentioned earlier. I think the issue that some folks within the community had was the film's like integral relationship with music
Hmm.
is not completely, I guess, carried through the movie in the best way. And there are elements of the movie like this, which we all loved, um, that make it apparent that the film is, at the end of the day, a film about deaf folks, uh, written, directed, created by people who can hear. And I mean, to what you were saying, earlier of like what is called Coda, um, but then so maybe it isn't the best representation for deaf folks.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, so because I did read a couple of the articles, and so one of them is like relationship to music. Like there's a moment where I think that it's the dad who like feels her throat for vibrations, but one person in the community said that like there would be no way to tell the difference between that and a cell phone vibrating. So there's just like this hokey movie magic that doesn't really
Right.
amount to anything. And these moments, I'm curious to know, like with closed captioning, how did they describe it, if at all? How are folks who can't hear going to be able to know that that moment's even happening? Um, but then on the flip side, like you were saying earlier, there were folks from the community who celebrated that they casted folks of the community in these roles. They celebrated the fact that like sex was discussed in a very like genuine way, and other moments like that where it felt like, I did, from the moment it became apparent this was going to be an Oscar award season film and they started doing all of the press junkets. I I live for a press junket, so I did listen to a lot of them by the folks behind the camera, in front of the camera, and they had ASL interpreters on set. They had a team go through the script from the community and provide feedback there. There were folks on set. Like they did seem. I mean, there were even times where some of the consultants of the community would come and go, this is not how the production design would be for someone who can't hear, because logically we need to make sure that my visibility with other folks in the community is the most clear. We got to be the integral part of
Right.
living room and not something else. So stuff like that, and like how you arrange furniture and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I mean, even some of the articles that I like scanned through during the duration of this chat did say like it doesn't seem to be a universal like we don't like this movie, but there were some people that were very outspoken and felt like it didn't feel like the most genuine representation for the way I think a lot of the media is slapping on representation onto this film.
So
Yeah.
that's an interest. I totally agree, or I can totally see that as well. That's something that I've talked to Jason and other people of, just like minority representation, right? Because it's seen as a disability, and that in itself is also a minority, right? And then we see it also with, I was talking specifically about Latinos or Latinas and Latinx, and just kind of similar stuff that there's been about Lin Manuel Miranda stuff and certain types of casting and In the Heights, and it's always going to be in the community itself. There's going to be different levels of like, is this enough representation? Is it accurate? Is just having the start of representation good enough? Or are we always trying to achieve, there's it's so kind of in that sense fluid because it is the thing also that I see for the different Latine stuff that's out there of just like, let's get more, like even Eugenio being in this, I was like, awesome, great. I didn't realize he was in this film, and seeing him in a role other than just the Latin lover or the goofy whatever or the this and that, it's like seeing more of acting chops, right? And just like, and then just like him starting with that joke of the rolling the R's, right? Like just of like we as Latin American and just being able to roll the R's, that in itself is a huge thing. But then it even made me think like, yeah, imagine if you're deaf or like if you have some sort of issue with speaking, how do you even begin to explain like you're rolling an R, right? But I think visibility, the way I've been looking at it more with movies and all this, and movies that deal with different areas that mainly I'm not accustomed to, or just like, are we getting more visibility to to people, to group cultures, to different scenarios that we haven't seen before? And if we're doing that, something is better than nothing, right? There's a kind of a thing like, we might think it's nothing, we might think it's not worth it, but if there was zero and now there's something, that's huge. Maybe that's just how me and like the stuff that I've kind of read and seen of just the fact that there's starting to be more representation. There's starting to be more stories. Like, hopefully this continues. Hopefully these leads, kind of like with Moonlight. Hopefully that movie, when that came out, like hopefully that allows, hopefully that opened doors, right? And hopefully this opened doors to try and get more of those kind of movies out there, or TV shows, or any of that.
I mean, I guess that there's a point to that. Like, yes, there is a start, and there's like more to build on.
Yeah.
But like, we also have to take into consideration how like, because it kind of surprises me that it's more about like how like individuals like that was their main complaint. Because like my main problem when I was watching it the whole time was just how aggressive some of the family characters seemed about her like trying to live her own life, to the point where it was, like the mom character, for example, like I feel like the way that she was written was just very like it just, and I think this is just my own thing, but she came off very, very antagonizing, to the point where it's just like she's literally just asking to do an after school activity.
But then they broke down and talked about it with
They did, and
with
like I think like you said, and at the end of the day, like the fact that you brought up the fact that it's the girl's story and not the family's, and like putting that back into context kind of makes me kind of change the way I see this film a little bit. Like I think that you saying that really made a lot more dots click for me.
and then that even to me, I'm glad you brought up the mom, because I wanted to, and I mean, she already has won an Oscar. Like, I think in like the 70s, 80s, she was the first deaf performer, actor, actress, depending how people keep going back and forth with that. She was the first one to win an Oscar for that. Um, but so that scene with her talking about it, and then her bringing up like the fact of how non-relationship she had with her own mother, because the
Right.
mother could talk, then that totally answered at the beginning of the movie when it's like, I gotta talk to your grandmother, please, interpret. and the daughter is like, no,
Mhm.
and use the video voice, whatever. And the mom was like, didn't want to deal with that. But then when you find out, it's like, oh, she doesn't have a relationship with her own mother. Like, it had all these smaller gems that, again, it would have been nice to see more of it. But it's like, there's just so much, right? There's like so many different little hallways that we could go and we could kind of discover. Oh, and just to go with that, the language and stuff like that. And I was talking to you, Michaela, before everyone got on,
Mm-hmm.
that this movie was originally rated R, and it was due to language, and it was due to basically sign language, and like the stuff that they were talking about, and signing, and like I guess the sexual aspect of it, and like what the kids were calling each other and stuff like that. And the producers and people like actually fought to get it down to PG-13, and kind of like, this is how a lot of the deaf community like communicates with each other, right? It's just more, more either whether it's open or just like, let's just say it how it is, or we don't have a buffer because people can hear us anyway, so we're gonna, which is always kind of also the thing of like, when you're either talking in Spanish or a different language and other people can hear you, that's the big thing. When you think no one else can hear you, you really say, what's up, or you really say whatever you want, type of thing. So I think that's the maybe, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but the sign language community of just like, let's, we're just gonna kind of be more honest. We don't have time to like, you know sign all these niceties or whatever. But I thought that was super interesting because languages, even, I brought up how Latin American, South American Spanish, we do a lot of words and slang that, like in Mexico and Central America, is like super, like that's super dirty or that's insulting or whatever. But in South America, it's just like, it's cool, it's whatever. And then there's certain phrases and words in England that, and in the US uses, that it's like, oh, that's super dirty, don't say that. So to me, that language just kind of was interesting in that sense. um I don't know if I'm going in circles now. Someone, did I make sense? Did
Yeah,
I-
no, like that's like also like a very like I think the film did very well was like showing the different cultures of the different languages, because at the end of the day that's what they are, they're different languages,
Mhm.
and like how that culture kind of um translates between her two worlds. Like I think they could have explored that a little bit more, especially
Yeah,
with the sign language part of it. um but like when there's so many things to explain about like a certain existence, like what do you include, what do you keep out, you only have an
right.
hour 45 to say something.
Yeah, because I was even thinking, spoilers, but I was thinking, are they really going to end this movie with her not even going to the audition, and just like her being like, no, I'm here for my family, type of thing? Like, for a split second there, I was like, I think they might. Kind of like how Manchester by the Sea or whatever, at the end, it's like, oh, he's going to become. And I was like, oh, no, he didn't, right? Like, I felt it was a similar thing with this movie. I was like, are they going to go real kind of like, no, this is reality. Like, she's gonna stay back with her family and kind of help the business and stuff like that. But
There was a good moment where they stopped touching upon the singing aspect of the movie long enough where it's like that. I thought, oh, I guess we're just gonna drop it. It won't be resolved. But as soon
yeah,
as that scene with the dad happens, like, nah, you can't do that now. There was no going back. It's like, she has to go to college. And then, of course, as soon as, like we mentioned earlier, she didn't bring her music sheet. She was 30 minutes late. The teacher came up to accompany her. Like, all this stuff would never fly, but as soon as the
yeah,
family is there to support her, and the auditors know, like, oh shit, they're a deaf family. How could they?
Suspension of disbelief. That was my issue with Whiplash, though. When like he forgets the music, he goes back, he rents a car, and I'm like, you can rent a car until you're 25 unless you have an adult co-signing. So
Yeah.
that so I mean, we can definitely pinpoint and like just do all these different things, but it's suspension of disbelief.
I
There's gotta be.
actually did bring up Whiplash several times during the
You
film.
did.
And I was like, thank God he's not J.K. Simmons, right? Like, she thinks she has it rough now.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, all right. Well,
I mean, girl was getting up at 3 a.m. fishing with her family, dealing with like actual government shit. Because
Yeah,
the
but
fishing stuff they did their research on, because that's actually a big problem on the like East Coast and all that, all our fisheries right now. Is like all these fishermen who are like, we need to be able to make our
Yeah.
livelihoods, and all the scientists, but we don't have enough fish.
because all the fish are going to those sushi at grocery stores. That
Yeah,
every
all the bigger
it's like,
companies are scooping them up and
yes.
damaging our oceans.
I mean, but then also for like farmers and fishermen and all that, it's kind of like all these companies, whether it's Tyson or big, companies are able to be like, oh, we're just taking this. All the bills fall upon you, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
gas, whether it's maintenance, whatever they were saying they would have to pay $800 a month or some shit like that, or
Mm-hmm.
for having that radar or making sure they were following anyway, weird shit like that, right? It's like, yeah, that's there, and that ends up hindering the small time family fishermen or family farmers and stuff like that. So there are so many different points of view that this movie could have gone. But I'll jump into my final thoughts first because I feel like I've been talking a lot and I want to be quick and sweet. Everything that we've spoken, I still enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a sweet movie. I thought it was very enjoyable. This right now, I always like debating. We can look into more deeply what the into the film and different aspects. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was very sweet. That's my final thoughts.
my final thoughts. The movie looked like it was made for Hallmark's Instagram channel, but I really enjoyed the humor. There's some really good moments in the film where I was like, okay, that's where the gold came from. I'll let it go. That's great. But I can't recommend the movie because I have to know how old the brother is. How old is he?
Are we done screaming?
It's a B plus for me. The movie's a B plus.
Steve, do you know how old he is? Is that why you jumped in?
Yes.
Nice. All right, Michaela, final thoughts?
It's a good movie. It's enjoyable. It's something you can watch with the family. It's very reminiscent of.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm shocked that it did not get the R rating for language.
That's because you're a prude.
I definitely wouldn't recommend this with the family.
Are you kidding? Like, this is something.
Oh my god.
Like the dad would be like, "That's a bad word. We're not gonna say that." But I could see this like someone's dad bringing this in to be like, "I'm teaching you kids culture. I'm not wrong about this."
The amount of times that man signed nutsack and shit in that movie, that's a drinking game right there.
GP, I'm sorry that you felt uncomfortable. But other people have sex. I'm sorry.
How old is he?
But anyways,
Actor
there was like
actor
a lot,
was born in '89.
but it's something that like we've all seen, and
Right.
like if it's on in the background, I'm not going to be mad about it.
I have more of an issue that the girl signed that she had herpes, and I never saw him try and figure out whether she did or didn't have herpes. That's what was more worrisome to me.
Antibiotics.
Anyway. All right, who still needs to go? Final thoughts wise.
I enjoyed the film. I like the story. It was cute. And yeah. I found the family dynamics pretty relatable. That like I was able to kind of overlay like being a child of immigrant parents and see some kind of how I've felt like maybe she feels in this film for other reasons, but having that same similar dynamic, which I did not anticipate in watching the film. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, my folks are always trying to start a small business, or like, my grandpa had a landscaping business. My father had like a tables and chairs rental service, and being like, well, Saturday and Sunday I need to go help my dad. And then being like, oh, but I have extracurriculars now. Like I'm in high school band, so it's like, do I have the time? And you're expecting me to go to the football game, come back, help you pack up the truck with all the tables and chairs, and then in the morning go do that, and then get dropped off at school. And it's just this thing of like a necessity. It's like, yeah, like sure it's a chore, but it's also a business. So it's like, where's the line? So yeah, I enjoyed it. I am mindful of the criticism, but it, even in reading some of the articles, it does seem like it's not a we are speaking on behalf of the whole community, kind of like in the conversations we've had within our own community about the representation that exists in certain stories that center Latinas in film and television. The the degree in which we can celebrate something and still be critical seems to be the same kind of conversation that's happening about this film. So, and honestly, like it won the Oscar, which is I this film over like some of the more recent winners of the Oscar. Yeah. Anyway, that's my final thought. Bye.
You put it so eloquently, by the way.
I tried. I hope I wasn't just
Of
rambling.
the conversation and all. I couldn't even. I was like, you were saying something, and I was like, oh well, that was he used his words to express his thoughts. So, and now I can't even point out the exact moment that I was thinking of. Oh boy.
Forget about Red Table. We need Ray's comfy couch.
Hey,
We need couch chats.
It's called Dino's Sidebar.
Nice. All right. Well, with that, I think anyone else have anything to say about Coda? I'd recommend it. Go watch it. I think we're good with this. So even though Jason wasn't able to join us, I think he would have a question for Mr. Steve, and it goes something like this: Hey, Steve, what do you have for us next week?
Next week, I don't know why you asked me, because now my turn. It is the lovely lady Michaela's
What?
turn.
Oh, you were doing a joke.
I was
We're
trying
doing a
really,
bit.
really hard.
I feel like an April Fool.
You are.
Oh.
But you're my April Fool.
No.
Anyways,
Oh.
Don't give her that. No.
Thank
Boo! Boo! Shame on you. No.
Anyways, our choices this week are the Red Shoes or Vertigo.
Ooh, I haven't watched either.
Right?
What is Red Shoes also Hitchcock, or is that someone else?
That's someone else.
Is it a kind of horror thrillery? Do you give us anything on that?
I just seen clips in a lot of things. It's a very historical film with like a lot of regard, and I've always just really, really wanted to see it.
Gotcha. So it's a Wizard of Oz prequel. That's
Maybe.
what I'm getting.
It makes me think now of that movie
Black
about Hitler.
What? Is there?
It's
The
kind of
Inglorious
Spoiler alert.
Bastards.
Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, Jojo Rabbit. Yeah, the shoes and her hair. I get it. Okay.
Anyway,
Wow. I don't know.
Do you think that she ties her shoes in Nazis?
Oh, damn.
I'm done. I'm done.
So we gotta vote on this. Okay, I guess. All right.
Red
I guess
Shoes
I get my
1,
vote.
Vertigo 2.
You guys need more context, or you guys?
I don't know. I don't know if the context would help. I mean, the context is, yeah. I don't. I've seen one of the two movies. I don't know if that helps. So it's like,
Let me just look up a log line for Red Shoes real quick.
I'll
Okay.
give it to you. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
It's a 1948 film. It's a classic drama with Vicky Page. Is an inspiring ballerina torn between her dedication to dance and her desire to love, while her imperious instructor, Boris Lermontov, urges to her to forget anything but ballet.
Ah,
that sounds
Billy
like the movie we
Elliot.
just watched. That
Sounds
sounds
like
like
Whiplash.
the movie we just watched.
I know.
Okay.
I love Billy Elliot.
And then Vertigo is a film from 1958. An ex-police officer who suffers from an intense fear of heights is hired to prevent an old friend's wife from committing suicide. But all is not as it seems.
What?
That just made me dizzy.
All right. I mean, they
Sorry.
didn't really help, but sure. I had already made up my mind.
All right.
So, Red Shoes.
Uno. That's a really dope poster, by the way. I didn't and it's from 48. Is that
Yeah.
Right?
1948, 1958.
Bring back old posters, am I right?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Count us down, Michaela, or up,
All
whichever.
right.
You know.
3, 2, 1. Vote.
Oh, wrong one. There we go. Oh, it's a
It's a
tie.
tie. Oh my gosh.
You gotta break it. You're
So,
tiebreaker.
Michaela,
I
you gotta break
so-
it.
We're gonna go with Red Shoes.
All right, Red Shoes.
Red
Speaking
Shoes
of
it
old
is.
post-
Red Shoes it is. For El Dondino, JP Michaela, by Raymond Arturo, and Steve the TV. I wasn't here, but I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.